That what we have done this semester is just the beginning.
In May 2015, an 18-year-old young man named Sam Castro was shot and killed. Sam wasn't the first victim in Worcester and sadly isn't the last. But his death sparked a question among some community partners. Is there a crisis for boys in Worcester? And if so, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? Working with those partners, the Community Needs and Resource Analysis class of fall 2015 conducted an assessment in Worcester. Students in the class interviewed boys, families, providers, and decision makers and did an analysis of community resources.
Listen.
Frustrating, but not unpleasant.
Serious and real.
Inspiring.
Real, very real.
Heart-wrenching.
Complicated.
The process has been stressful and has been a lot and has been great, and I've been able to make some wonderful, good friends from my group. But in essence, I would say those boys are inspiring, and this whole process has been inspiring to me.
It was deep. The connection was strong because we spent so much time with so many boys and young men, hearing their stories, hearing the things that they wish they had when they were younger, and then hearing from the younger kids the things they wish they had now. And I was a boy in Worcester, and some of these limitations, these stories, like I hear them and I'm just like, damn, that still hasn't changed, or damn, that's even worse than before. And I know how I felt, and I know how alone I felt. I can only, and some of these stories are even, are harder than.
I think it was definitely difficult because it's talking about like boys' hope in Worcester, and I think a lot of controversy is like, oh, like some boys don't even have hope, or what does hope even mean, or what does hope look like for different boys that come from different backgrounds. I kind of like really wanted to make sure something really good came out of this, and that we're collecting like really great data that represented the boys' voices instead of just like representing what people were saying about boys in Worcester.
I have felt very conflicted about like the work that gets done and what needs to get done and where I fit in all of it and where this class fits into it, and sort of feeling like, I don't know, it feels kind of chaotic. But another major theme was these larger systems of inequality that prevent young men from reaching this expectation that's been set for them by other people that don't necessarily live their realities.
In terms of large-scale systemic inequity adversely affecting boys of color, and especially Latinos in Worcester.
Our Latinos are doing the worst in every single category that you can name. So access to healthcare, suspension rates, education, access to employment, and so on. And that, of course, leads to the question of what's going on that is not functioning.
So it's this, that came up a lot in one of my interviews, was this idea of like roses growing from concrete, where people are so focused on this. So this rose grows from a crack in the concrete. It's from a Tupac Shakur thing, and the rose comes out and its petals are kind of jacked up and it has a bunch of thorns, and everyone talks about how the rose is sort of in this dire state, but no one notices that it grew out of concrete, not from like soil and not with sunlight. And so that is a larger metaphor for how we treat young men in the city.
You made connections between the perception of boys in Worcester and the media and how that affects the perceptions. We were able to connect issues of where boys felt like they were perceived as thugs, so why not become a thug? Why not, since society's labeling me as that, from even just from articles that we had read and that we had done our media analysis, there were clear connections between those.
Young boys in the city understand how the community perceives them, and that this negative perception then perpetuates their negative behaviors.
And we also found that positive relationships are really important to boys having role models, support systems, and also just a sense of belonging.
I really explored this concept of familism, which means higher value on family and the well-being of the family as a collective, not solely as separate individual entities. The other piece was this idea of differential acculturation, focus on youth and parent kind of relationship. For our recent immigrant families, for our first generations, there is this idea that a lot of the times, in many of the cases, acculturation needs to happen, meaning you have to assimilate some of the values or some of the actions in which the host culture functions, so you can survive within this new culture in which you're living. But that happens at different levels. So keeping in mind the discrimination that parents might be experiencing in the work setting and that our kids might be experiencing in the school setting are stressors that really complicate and affect emotionally in the development of our youth and the communication of parents and the young people. The quicker and the more that our young people assimilate or acculturate to the host culture, most likely they will be more involved or have more risk to actually engage in risky behaviors. So there is this disconnect because there is this acculturation of our young people quicker than their parents, and so there is a kind of a break in communication that really affects that relationship. However, if we look at this from a perspective of more the assets of what we bring, this idea of familism really comes into place, tied with parenting practices, positive parenting practices that can really serve as a buffer, both for the youth and the families.
We found a lot of connections with mothers. A lot of the boys felt like their mothers were a really big impact on their lives, and you would see young boys 14 saying, well, I just want to make it out so I can help my mom, so I can provide for her. In the opposite spectrum, we found that boys found it natural that fathers weren't there.
Our major findings were that, yeah, there's a lot of resources in the city, and we only scratch the surface, really. There's some that we definitely related to, like Snyder's Hope Theory, and saying, okay, this does pathways, this does agency, this does goal orientation.
And we also found that workforce development can be a powerful tool for boys finding the goals that they're trying to get to and finding the steps to try and get there.
Yeah, there's resources and there are barriers to accessing those resources.
We definitely saw that there was a lack of good programs that were specifically tailored to boys and specifically tailored to boys who were at risk, in that gap between being eligible for certain programs and then being eligible for things once they got out of prison. That sort of preventative area I think there was we identified a pretty strong gap there.
It was there's those tangible barriers income requirements, age limits, policies about gang-involved youth, and location, and then there's also the intangible stuff of like with the boys group, is this a place I feel like I belong, and what about the cultural competency and relevance, and is institutional racism embedded in all these systems of service provision.
Finally, we found that participatory decision making is an effective way to both get kids involved in planning of programs and results in more culturally relevant, directly relevant to the kids' programs.
collaboration would be great, but it's hard. Families, boys, service providers, schools, the whole community, and like really being like an advocate and in solidarity with boys and all youth in the city.
I hope that this project becomes more collaborative with boys in the city. So I hope that young men are able to contribute what they would want to see happen, and that becomes a larger voice in the conversation than our needs assessment.
And whatever it is, it's just something tangible so that people in the community, especially the young males, see that something's actually happening with the information that they gave us.
At a minimum, I would like to see us be able to come up with a series of policy recommendations or programmatic interventions, something that we can build either a new policy off of or a new project that will have a lasting, even if it's a small lasting impact, some sort of lasting impact on boys in this city.
Early programming and restorative programming can be really powerful in addressing root causes.
Boys need support systems that are actively there, not just there for the programs, that are actively in their lives. We found that a lot of people are more invested when they feel like they've been invested in. There's only so much programming can do. We have to change some of the systems that are causing boys to feel like they can't be in a certain place, or to feel like racism exists.
I would say that your conflicted feelings are good and you should talk to other people in your class about them. And that find a way to connect to this in a real way, on an emotional level, because it will make the work that you do meaningful.
Know when to step back, and know when to step up also, and know when to use your privilege to call out oppression and injustice.
To understand that this is something, like you're dealing with people's lives.
And definitely pay attention to your own heart, because I think that's the part that if you miss what's going on there, it's gonna throw off everything.
Wanting people to really take this seriously, to take the issues seriously, because it's not about us. It's not about what we feel about the issues. It's about the boys that we're working for, the families that we're working for, the providers that we're working for, because it's a group, it's a community effort.
Care, like honestly care, like please don't do this as like a class to get by, that's something you need to do, but like actually own it, like feel it, empathize with the work and the reason that this is here, the reason we're doing it. Like and then don't be scared to be honest and be real.
Seeing kids die and kids do in jail, and that are good kids that didn't deserve it, and it could have been a different story. And so I just want to continue to be a part of helping create different stories.